For those that have logged in, and we welcome you, I would like to welcome all those who are attending this remote public information forum hosted by the Woodbridge Opportunity Study Committee, Housing Opportunity Study Committee. I am Dominic Thomas, the chairman of the committee, and in early 2021, the committee was established by the Board of Selectmen with the specific charge to guide the town of Woodbridge in formulating a long-term plan to comply with federal and state housing laws, including fair housing laws, and B, in promoting a mix of housing opportunities, including the development of an affordable housing plan as required by state law. To address the committee's charge, the committee members are actively involved in gathering and assessing housing-related data for Woodbridge. The committee is committed to engaging the community so that the required affordable housing plan truly reflects the housing needs of all of the Woodbridge community. Early in the fall, in tandem with the South Central Region Council of Governments, the SCROG, the committee promoted a regional housing survey. It is noted that in proportion to the population, the survey response from Woodbridge was one of the highest in the region. In addition to the survey data provided by the SCROG survey, a second survey written by the committee members specifically for Woodbridge residents and other community members will be available early in the new year in both digital and hard copy formats. This evening's public forum is an important step in the formulation of the town's housing plan, as well as in the development of our targeted community survey. At this evening's forum, the first of several public meetings for Woodbridge, hopefully the future ones will be in person, you will hear from David Fink, a consultant to the SCROG and an expert on housing issues in the state of Connecticut. David will provide background information regarding the housing issues facing both the state and the town of Woodbridge. After David's presentation, there will be an opportunity for questions and comments on the material that he has presented. At this forum, the committee itself will not be responding to questions about specific potential approaches, but we look forward to hearing the comments, concerns, questions, and suggestions of the community regarding the housing opportunities or lack thereof in Woodbridge. It is important to us that the upcoming survey questions and ultimately the town housing plan can truly reflect the Woodbridge community. I want to thank you again for participating, and I would like now to introduce committee member Kathy Hunter, who will introduce David.
Well, it's really my privilege to introduce David Fink, who, as Dominic said, is a housing policy consultant working with the South Central Regional Council of Governments and working to advance the affordable housing planning process as mandated by the state. In addition to his work as a housing policy consultant, David is also an adjunct lecturer at UConn and Central Connecticut State University, where he teaches American government and journalism. In fact, he's had a pretty long career in journalism, working for Hartford Courant and the Boston Herald, USA Today. And I had the great opportunity to work with David when he was the policy director at the Partnership for Strong Communities. And so David is a fantastic resource for effectively engaging us as a community, because we as a committee do want to ensure a high level of participation in this real critical dialogue as to how to create housing opportunities in our town. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to David.
Well, thank you, Kathy. It's great to be in Woodbridge virtually, but even virtually, it's great to be in Woodbridge. I congratulate all of you for attending tonight. It's a very good turnout. And I want to assure you that what I have tried to do in the presentation you're about to hear is try to strike a balance between the many of you attending tonight who I think have some good knowledge of housing and housing policy issues and how to get housing built and where to do it and all the related questions. And some of you who may not know as much about it, not because you're unintelligent. This is a pretty intelligent town. but you just don't think about it all the time. So I will try to kind of give you a sense of the issues that you face. I never tell towns what to do. It's not my place. I don't know enough about the town, but I will tell you what other towns are doing and some ideas that they have come up with. And then it's really going to be up to you. And as Dominic said at the outset, it's really important that everyone in the town gets their 2 cents in. Everyone in the town gets educated and communicates with each other because housing policy is complicated on the one hand, but rather simple. Everyone needs to have a home that's appropriate and affordable to them and that works for their family. So with that, Kathy, if you can show the first slide, we'll try to get through these slides in about 15 or 20 minutes, and then we'll be happy to take questions at the end. So please jot down questions if you have them, and we'll try to handle them through the raised question icon and the chat icon. So Kathy, if you can come up with the first slide. That's great. Okay, and we can advance it. That's just the title slide, and I will try to keep it moving. So next one, please.
Give me 1 second. Don't know what's happening here. Don't know why it's not going.
Okay. All right. So as I say, I don't tell towns what to do, but I will tell you what other towns are doing. Housing's vital. It's controversial. Everybody who has a home, has bought a home, or rents a home. It's the central part of their life. It's the largest part of the average family budget. For people who own homes, it's the largest check they ever write, and everything is tied up in that. Their family security, their children's education, their wealth, their retirement, their security. So it can be a controversial issue if it's not handled the right way. And as we know, housing can bring happiness and opportunity, but if you don't have the right home for you and your family, it can really be a problem. Next slide, please. Okay. The idea, and the towns that have done the best here are towns where everyone gets involved. You are lucky enough to have leadership that has thought to create a housing committee in town. I've met most of the members. They are very thoughtful, open-minded people. The idea for the town is that I'm sure most of the town, the large majority, probably 99% of the town, is also thoughtful and open-minded. You will run into your neighbors, though, some neighbors who will be a little close-minded, and they will believe stereotypes and have fears. I do not get down on those people. I've met people like that in every town, and I don't blame them because, as I say, I understand. People have everything tied up in that home. They love the town the way it is. They're afraid of change. So for those of you who've taken behavioral psychology in college, you know one of the primary fears of people is loss. And if you live in a beautiful town like Woodridge, you're afraid of losing this town that you love so much. And so that's the issue with housing. People have been shown over the years a number of stereotypical images on TV and given ideas about who lives in income-restricted housing units. It's not true. We'll show you examples of that. But you can't blame people if they're fearful that the wrong people will move into town and be their neighbors and cause them pain. So it's really important. The right approach is to know your town and understand the people there, and be, more to the point, understanding of the people in your town, because people have fears and you can't blame them for them. Next slide, please. As I say, the ways to be successful are to be inclusive. Build something together. I don't mean literally build, but you need to build the town, the homes, the services, the amenities together. And your job is to learn what your town needs, what it's got in the way of housing, what it needs, and most important, very often, where to put it. Because you don't want to plop the wrong kind of housing down in the wrong place. You want to put it where it fits its surroundings, how it's designed, so that it works vitally for you. Choices are vital. I think it's important to consider a range of potential locations, housing types, and designs. It's like, for those of us who have had children, the first time I know I gave my children broccoli, I didn't say you have to have the broccoli. I said, honey, you can have the peas or the broccoli, and gave them a choice and empowered them. Then I said, you can have it with ketchup or not. But it's really, really important for people in town to have choices and to feel they have some power and that you're not going to shove something down their throats. There are ways to deflate the myths that people believe. There's good research out there. A lot of people, I have to say this because I was guilty of this too, lack perspective. A lot of us think we're middle class. We're not middle class. The median household income in the state is about $78,000. That's the midpoint. And a lot of people struggle to pay their daily bills. We'll talk about that more in a minute. So it's really good to kind of understand who we're dealing with, who we need, who needs a home that works for them. And then the town has to decide its goals. Do you want to lessen the housing cost burden for the people who already live there? Do you want to create new options for the people who live there? Do you want to create options for people to move into town who you need? When I was at the Partnership for Strong Communities, we used to say, strong communities need all kinds of people, and all kinds of people need all kinds of housing. And that changes over the years. So the family that needed a 4-bedroom colonial when their kids were growing up doesn't always want that after the kids are gone. They don't want to shovel the snow and rake the leaves, and they want to downsize. Well, do you have units for them? Because they want to stay in town where their church and their family and their friends and their doc are. Do you have the homes that elderly people can age in place in? Do you have the homes for the people who are going to take care of those elderly people? Because if you don't, some of those elderly people are going to have to go into a nursing home because there's going to be no nurse's aide who's going to be able to get to them to stay with them all day. So there are real issues to think about, especially as a town and the people in it age. The next slide, please. We used to say that housing is the foundation of opportunity. It does have an impact on pretty much everything you do. Educational success, if you live in a school district where there's smaller class sizes and more experienced teachers, a range of course offerings from AP and honors classes to art and theater and music and other stuff for people who aren't as great in calculus, kids can flourish. In the same way, it affects environmental quality. If you can live near transit, you don't have to use your car. Transportation service, a whole bunch of stuff. If you can have access to healthcare and services, that matters. So housing is kind of a hub issue, and it's very related to other policy disciplines. The other thing you have to think about as you embark on creating this plan is that not everybody is going to agree. I did some work. I was asked by the Guilford Foundation about 6 years ago to go to Guilford. I worked with the town and their housing committee. We did a questionnaire like what SCROG has done with you, and like your housing committee is going to survey you again with in the early part of next year. They did a questionnaire. They put it on their website. They got 400 responses. 350 of them were very positive and helped the town figure out what it wanted to create and where. But 50 of the responses were, I should say, unkind. They were not polite responses. that's just going to the way it's going to be. Not everyone is going to agree, but to the best of your ability, if you can create a dialogue in the town and people can talk about this and review the different choices and options, that's a good thing. Next slide, please. I call housing a tap water issue. Why do I do that? Because when I go to the sink in the morning to brush my teeth and wash my face after I get up, I turn on the water and I don't think about how it got there. I have no idea how it got there. And for most people, that's the way it is with housing. Most people, every state and national poll I've ever seen, 85, 90% of people are satisfied with their housing situation, and they don't give any real thought to it because they're able to afford and find what they need that's appropriate for their family at the time. And I also say everyone cares about housing, they just don't know they care about it. They don't think of it. It's just not something that is a front burner issue because for most people, they have it, it occurs naturally. It's only when dad gets divorced from mom and wants to see his kids every Wednesday night and every other weekend, and he wants an apartment nearby and he can't find an apartment. Or when those baby boomers want to downsize and sell their house and they realize there's nothing for them to buy or rent in their hometown. And I can go on and on with the people who suddenly have to think about housing and realize, oh my God, I care about this and it's not available to me, or at least not what I need. Next slide, please. Why do towns seek to create more multifamily housing? There are a number of issues here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them, but right now the first one is preeminent. It's what the market wants. There is a huge demand for multifamily housing in virtually the entire state, and frankly, all over the country. And the reasons are pre-pandemic. In 2010, the boomers started really retiring in droves. Their children, the millennials, started marrying and home buying and child rearing. And they had a huge amount of education debt. Connecticut last year, I don't know what it is this year, was #1 in the nation in education debt. A lot of the boomers need and want to downsize, as I say. So they all started demanding the same kind of unit, which is a multifamily unit. And a lot of towns have found that they don't have that. And the reason is they don't have it is because housing used to occur naturally. A builder would buy a 40-acre cornfield and go into the town hall and say, I want to build 40 colonials. And the town said, sure. And he built them and they were great. And it was exactly what they needed. And most towns, as a result, built, well, I should say most, I should say 2/3 of the towns in the state built 40% or more of their housing from 1970 on. It makes sense because boomers like me were then in their 20s and starting families and wanted to buy homes, buy homes. And so lots of towns in the state built a huge amount of their housing then. And that's the way it's always happened. Fast forward from 1970 to 2010, suddenly housing demand changed and people wanted multifamily units. And a lot of towns don't have them. And that's what the market wants. So towns that are building multifamily units are finding that they're highly valued and they add to the grand list and provide property tax revenue. Similarly, in that, or at least in a related way, that tends to attract future buyers. If you build housing for young singles, for young families, so that they can move to your town, they will put down roots and they'll find schools and a church and a synagogue and a mosque and friends and family and a doctor and a dentist, and they'll decide they love it in your town and they'll want to buy. And that will increase home value because they will bid up the prices of homes. Every town does not realize that it's in competition with other towns, but towns are. If you can attract young people to your town, especially if you're an older town, you will increase your home values because people will come there, decide they want to live there, and buy a home there. Similarly, it will increase shoppers for workers. It will provide key workers for important jobs. And here's something we'll get into a little later. It will lower the pressure on your human services and policing people because the issues in a lot of towns, and I looked it up, Woodbridge is one of them, I'll show you. You have a lot of what used to be called working poor people, people who are making enough money paying all their bills, including their rent or their mortgage, but they're living on the edge. And one broken carburetor or mom's hours getting cut put them at risk and some of those people fall into homelessness. But we'll get into that a little more in a minute. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay. Why do towns want to do it? The resident interests, like we said, allow elderlies to stay in place, and age in place, allow your kids to come home after college and graduate school, so you get to see them for Sunday dinner, not just for Christmas and Easter. You can provide an opportunity for those who you want to come live in town, some of those nurses' aides, some of the other key workers at town hall, your police, your firefighters, your teachers, and also, like we said, to allow boomers to downsize. And that's happening all over the state, and a lot of towns are finding that creating multifamily housing helps keep their property values high and keeps their residents in town. Next slide, please. And if housing is too expensive, it stands to reason, that's bad for the residents of the housing. We will talk in a minute about people who are burdened by their housing costs. I don't know if you all remember, I remember when my dad told me, when I got my first apartment, don't spend more than 25% of your monthly salary on housing because you need money left over for food and clothing and transportation and everything else. HUD puts it at 30%. Well, you have a fair number of residents, as every town does in this state, because housing is very expensive, that are spending more than 30% of their income on housing. And that means they are technically burdened by their housing costs. Now, I don't think we'll have to take a collection for anybody who's making $1 million a year and is spending $300,000 of that, or even $350,000 of that for housing, because they have plenty left over for the rest of the stuff. But somebody who's making $50,000 a year and is spending $15,000 or more on housing and doesn't have a lot left over. And being burdened by your housing costs is not good for them. It's also not good for your merchants because people have less disposable income. And it's not good for the municipalities because if merchants can't do well, suddenly you have empty storefronts or merchants that aren't, kind of on the edge on whether they can pay their property taxes. Next slide, please. A little bit step back now. Let's just take a look at Connecticut's housing situation. Connecticut has the 6th highest median monthly housing prices in the nation. Housing costs a lot here. We're second in wealth disparity. The Gini coefficient is a measure of wealth disparity. It basically says that if everybody had an equal amount of money, the rating would be 0.0. If one person had all the money and everyone else had none, it would be 1.0. Connecticut is just about 0.50. The problem with wealth disparity, a lot of problems with wealth disparity, but one of them in a state like this is that when you have a lot of wealthy people, they drive up the costs of goods and services, including housing, and people with less money have to pay those higher prices that have been driven up by the people with more money. Statewide, 48% of the renters, 32% of homeowners are burdened by their housing costs. 128,000 of those renters spend more than 50% of their income in housing, if you can believe that. Those people are in big trouble. Woodbridge is a little different. I think you have about 2/3 of your residents are burdened by their housing costs, of your renters are burdened by housing costs, and a little fewer, about 28% of your homeowners are burdened by housing costs. So just so you know that. And this is interesting also. The housing wage is something computed by the National Low Income Housing Coalition. It basically says what you have to earn an hour in Connecticut to afford a typical 2-bedroom apartment. And in Connecticut, that's $27 and change, or roughly about $56,000 a year. I went down the Department of Labor website. Some of you can do this if you have a few spare minutes. There are over 680 occupations in Connecticut, believe it or not, and half of them have starting salaries that don't pay the housing wage. So as you can see, housing is very expensive in Connecticut. And as I said, it's 32% of the average budget. And unless you are paying a lot for childcare, which a lot of people with young children are, it's your largest expense. Next slide, please. Okay. As I said, we at this point in our demographic evolution, we don't have the housing stock we need. As I told you, 2/3 of Connecticut towns built more than 40% of their homes after 1970. That's why we have a lot of single-family homes. A lot of towns are skewed in the direction of single-family. And as a result of that, almost 3/4 of the towns have 70% or more single-family homes. I believe Woodbridge has higher than 70% single-family homes. And what that means in terms of getting people to move to town, to put down roots, want to buy a home there, bid up housing prices, there just aren't enough rungs on the ladder in many towns for people to get on that housing ladder and then be able to trade and buy up. A lot of towns, this is not an exclusive list, are doing a lot. And a lot of towns that are upper class, upper middle class towns are doing a lot on this issue, trying to find locations to build what they need. And they're doing a pretty good job on it. And as I say, I'm happy to provide the town with lots of good examples. We'll go through a few pictures in a moment. Next slide, please. Okay, as I said, 32% on average is what the average American household pays for housing, 19% for transportation, anywhere between 6 and 12% on energy costs. 30 municipalities in the state have a housing stock where more than 10% of the housing is income restricted. And those are typically the cities, Hartford, Bridgeport, New Haven, Waterbury, Norwich, and some of the first-ring suburbs around those towns. The problem is those are the places where lower-income people can live, and while we want to help their children with opportunity, those school districts tend to be the school districts with fewer resources, larger class sizes, not as many experienced teachers, fewer course offerings. This I referred to earlier, and I want to talk a little bit about this. I think it's a little over 140 towns in the state have more than 20% of their households who are ALICE households. Some of you may have heard about the United Way of Connecticut study. They've now done 4 or 5 iterations of this. ALICE is an acronym that stands for Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed. Like I said, used to be called Working Poor People. These are intact families with children who are living among us. They're largely invisible because, as I say, they're going to work, they're paying their bills, their kids are going to school, but they're living on the edge. As you can see, the income numbers are really interesting. $28,000 for an individual, $90,000 a year for a household of 4. That, as we all remember, used to be a lot of money, or enough. Now it's not for a household of 4. And so those people are very close, as I say, with an unexpected expense, anything unanticipated, of not being able to pay the rent or the mortgage payment, maybe getting evicted, maybe needing to get to the food pantry. As I say, over 140 of the 169 towns have at least 20% ALICE households. Believe it or not, a beautiful, well-to-do town like Woodbridge has 21% of its households that are ALICE households. That is surprising when towns see that. Towns like Shelton have 34%. Milford has over 30%. There are a lot of towns that have ALICE households, and they don't realize it because, like I say, we don't see these people. So next slide, please. Where does Scrog Town stand? I'm sorry if this is a little small. You can see that 21% number for ALICE, and that number is high on the percentages in the third column of burdened by housing costs. This shows 84%. It's really 66% in the latest numbers of renters, and about 27% of homeowners are burdened by their housing costs. The number of income restricted units in Woodbridge is 1.2%. Next slide, please. This is the breakdown generally. About 2/3 of the residents of Connecticut, about 950,000 households, own their homes, and about 1/3, about 475,000 households rent their homes. As we know, in Woodbridge and a bunch of towns in the region, the home ownership rate is considerably higher. Next slide, please. Here are a few of those statistics. As we said, sixth most expensive state in terms of median monthly housing costs. We talked about the wealth disparity, the ALICE study, the ALICE survival budget. I didn't know before, it's $32,000 for seniors. And the survival budget is what United Way of Connecticut says you must earn in order to meet all of your necessities. But like I said, one glitch, and suddenly you're deciding between being able to make the car payment and continuing to pay for your health care. Next slide, please. This is more municipal housing demographic data. I'll let you guys look at this. I've sent this PowerPoint to the town, and it will be available, I'm sure, for anyone who wants to see it. Next slide, please. How, why, where to bring down prices? There are, second bullet, three major factors, as Dominic knows, that affect housing prices: the cost of materials, the cost of labor, and the cost of land. Sometimes the cost of land can be defrayed if there's a municipally owned property or a piece of state surplus property. But very often land costs a lot, and the way to cut that land cost is with subsidy from the state, and there is money that is available to developers and to the state, so and the town can explore that. Other towns have used tax abatements. My town in West Hartford is giving its first tax abatement to developers ever because it wanted a 300+ unit development to include 12% income restricted units, and the developers couldn't get historical housing tax credits, so the town is giving a tax abatement. Towns can also provide density. Mark Twain said, buy land because God's not creating any more of it. Well, you can create land, but you do it vertically. You can allow more density by going up. I'll show you some examples of housing. 4 stories, 5 stories is not going to fit the surroundings in a lot of locations, but 2 and 3 stories will. And there are ways to design it so it looks really nice and it doesn't look like a big, tall high rise that we all imagine and would not be appropriate in certain places. Like I said, affordability is also not as valuable in some places. I don't think that putting an affordable unit out far away from services and shopping and jobs and training and transportation is really doing a low to moderate income person a favor, because if he or she has to buy a $500 clunker that gets 8 miles to the gallon, you're really not doing that person a favor, especially if the carburetor breaks in week 2 and now you can't get anywhere. So, it's important to think about the location. But where you put it can reduce transportation costs. If it's near transportation, it can, if it's a denser unit and it shares walls and ceiling and floor with other units, it can cut on the heating bill. And needless to say, you can cut auto emissions if you put it near transit. Next slide, please. Letting the town's residents shape this plan is really important, and Woodbridge is doing all the right things now. You are communicating with each other. A lot of people are getting a good education on this and sharing what they've learned. You have the housing committee. A lot of towns are doing that now. That was recommended by Regional Plan Association through the Department of Housing to towns, and a lot of towns have created housing committees. My town has. Having this kind of forum, doing surveys, slideshows, videos, those are important. Conversation in town will help clear up a lot of issues for people. Next slide, please. Making progress has to do with combating myths. There are a lot of myths out there, and we'll talk about one example in a minute. There's been a lot of research done by MIT, Enterprise Housing, a bunch of reputable organizations that show that mixed income housing, if it's properly designed, does not bring down neighboring property values. It just doesn't. I know a lot of people believe that, but that's just not what the research shows. Similarly, a lot of people think that the people who live in income restricted units are, what's the best way to put it? Bad people, drug dealers, gang leaders. Think of your worst nightmare. They're not. They make less money, but they do important jobs, and they want to have a peaceful, nice home. And I'll show you examples of housing in a minute. Mixed income housing around the state in a lot of really nice communities where the police are not there every night, and there are no bullets flying and graffiti on the walls and used syringes on the ground. I know what people are afraid of, and I understand why they're afraid. And like I say, I don't blame them, but it's just not the experience. The design is important, and I'll show you those in a minute. The other I want to give you an example on is school costs. A lot of people believe that if you build multifamily housing, you get a lot of school children, and it adds to your school costs. And again, that's not true either. Next slide, please. I'll show you. So about 15 years ago, Rutgers did the seminal work on housing costs at a time of increased demographics for that age group of school-age children. They looked at every state in the nation. The Connecticut numbers show that if you create a one-bedroom multifamily unit, you get 0.04 school children, or put another way, 4 public school-age children, age 5 to 19, for every 100 one-bedroom units you create. Makes sense. Who's going to move into a one-bedroom unit with a child? Parent and a child are not going to share a one-bedroom unit. Only in 4 out of 100 cases. Similarly, 2-bedroom unit, you get Rutgers found that 0.27 children, or in other words, about 1 child for every 4 2-bedroom units. Again, it's intuitive, makes sense. 2-bedroom units are going to be for grandma who wants a second bedroom when the grandkids come over, 2 singles who are sharing, a young couple who wants a second bedroom as an office and for guests, and in 1 out of 4 cases, you're going to get a parent and a child. 3-bedroom unit, multifamily units, you start to get a few more children, 1.38. But the real issue is that a lot of people believe that if you have a school budget of $1,000 and you have 10 children in the schools, that it costs you $100 per school child, and that every time you get an additional child in the school, it's going to cost you another $100. Well, that's just not true. I'm sure all of us are sitting at home now in rooms where we could probably see 3 or 4 more people in the room, and it would probably cost us the same for heat and light. It's only if you have to add a new classroom, a new teacher, a new school, if your enrollment goes up a lot, that you're going to increase your school costs. UMass did a study and found that school budgets are not sensitive to enrollment. They're sensitive to education, healthcare and energy and labor costs, not enrollment. Final point on this is that we have anecdotal evidence from all over the state, lots of developments that show that multifamily housing doesn't bring a lot of school children. So Rutgers did not get it wrong. And OPM and the Connecticut State Data Center have projected that for most school districts in the state, through 2030, enrollments are going to go down. So there's going to be room in school in classrooms anyway. So I know a lot of people believe that you build housing, multifamily housing, you're going to get more school children. You're not. Actually, you get more school children if you build 4-bedroom colonials. That's where you get more school children. So again, I know that that's not what some people believe or may not want to believe, but that's the truth. Next slide, please. As I say, property values, there are a bunch of surveys and studies, and we can get you those too if you want to look at those. I mean, obviously, if you put a 20-story high-rise in the middle of a bunch of single-family homes, some people may not want to buy the single-family homes, but that's rarely done. And if you put a nicely designed multifamily development near anything, it's not going to lower property values. Frankly, it tends to increase it because the more people living there, the more shops you're going to get nearby, and it's just going to be a more fun and walkable place to live. Next slide, please. Here are some of the examples that I wanted to show you. I'll take these quickly. one by one. New Canaan built these affordable 1 and 2 bedroom units. They're beautiful. They all have, as you can see, porches. They're really nicely designed, beautifully painted. Next slide, please. This is in Avon. This was built on a former industrial site that the town did a residential overlay using the Home Connecticut program. And, excuse me, they built, I think there are about 80 units here. They're really, really nicely designed. This was done by Metro Realty. Jeff Sager is a developer in the Hartford area. And they're 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. Again, mixed income housing there. 30% of the units are income restricted. Next slide, please. This is in Stonington. Again, these, I think 30% of the units here are income restricted. The developer, NeighborWorks New Horizons, worked with the town and worked with the fire department, police department, make sure there was access. This is right on Route 1 in the Pawcatuck section of Stonington. It's on a bus line. It's near shopping. It's a really great location. And as you can see, also really nicely designed. Next slide, please. This is in Farmington, again, built by Metro Realty. This is near the Yukon Health Center and United Technologies. I believe it's near Otis Elevator. These are mixed income townhouses. They all have beautiful courtyards. You have interns and lab techs living here. And again, 30% of these units were income restricted. Again, another upper income town like Farmington. Next slide, please. This is in Brookfield. They had a huge place to build this. They put in, as you can see, 3-story townhouses and some congregate units that go up 4 stories, but the topography allowed it. Again, 20% of these units are income restricted, and these are 1, 2s, and 3 bedroom units. Next slide, please. Darien, this is interesting. This was done by Garden Homes. This is a former nursing home. The footprint was right. This was redone, rehabbed. I was in some of these units. They're adorable. It was really nicely done. This is on the east end of Darien, right on Route 1, again, near shopping and walkable to a lot of services. And again, 30% of these units are income restricted for people at 60 and 80% of median income. Next slide, please. This is South Windsor. This is affordable elderly townhouses. These were built a while ago. I believe, I can't tell you for sure that these have first floor bedrooms. Needless to say, if you build elderly housing, you want to think about having bedrooms on the first floor, but they are accessible and they're easy to get into. Next slide, please. This is in Fairfield. This is on near the Bridgeport border. This was also done by Garden Homes. 30% of these units are restricted to people at 60 to 80% of median income. Very nicely designed, very solid, congregate housing, 3 stories, and well done with enough parking. Good job, and Fairfield is enjoying these homes. And I should tell you that these photos are not all new. I'm sorry, what I mean to say is that these were not taken right after this housing was built. And you can see, as I said, you know, they look better now than when they started because the landscaping's grown in and they've been built with quality materials and they're holding up great. Next slide, please. This is Wallingford. This is interesting. This was built by Liz Verna of Verna Builders. This is near the Oakdale Theater on the Merritt Parkway. This is another idea. These are freestanding condominiums, if you will. The homeowner owns about 12 feet around the outside of the home. They can landscape it any way they want. These are 3-bedroom units, 1-car garages. Again, there were about 84, 85 of them. 30% of these were income restricted for people at 60 and 80% of median income. They work with the town. I was just there last year, and they're in beautiful shape, and it's a really nice little community. Next slide, please. Oh, okay, so that's that. So the bottom line is, when you create housing, you're really in the opportunity business, and it paves the way for school success. There are two interesting studies. A woman named Heather Schwartz for the RAND Corporation did a study of Montgomery County schools, which made a decision through their housing authority about 15 years ago to make 15% of all the units they created income restricted. And the kids who moved into those homes and went to the Montgomery County schools, which is a terrific school district, found, guess what? Their reading and math scores went up. Conversely, Richard Rothstein, some of you may know in his book, The Color of Law, pointed out that people, this was a racial issue after World War II, primarily black people who were not allowed to buy homes by the Federal Housing Administration, have seen no accrual of wealth. Whereas like my folks bought a house in 1950 in Brooklyn, New York, a little townhouse that was about 1,100 square feet, and they bought it for $13,500, and it just sold for $688,000. Well, that kind of wealth accrual for families, young families who can buy a home, maybe rent first, save up enough money, allows them to develop wealth. They don't necessarily get rich, but they develop the kind of middle class accrual of wealth that can fund a business or help pay for college or get invested for a nest egg. So it's just to make the point that if people can get into a home, there's opportunity there. Next slide, please. Okay. So again, I'm just going to quickly run through a few of these questions, not all of them. The town's got to ask itself, are people burdened by their housing costs? Do you have a range of supply? What resources can we offer and build around, whether you have bus lines or services or schools or shopping, where it's good to put this housing. Next slide, please. You need to discuss these questions, and I'm happy to come back, and I'm sure you have very smart people. I know you have very smart people on your housing committee who can talk about, what is affordable housing? What's small a, what's called small a, or naturally occurring affordable housing? What's the 830G statute? What should or shouldn't you seek to learn from other towns? Because not every town is alike, and so you may want to pick up hints from other towns, and you may not. They may be applicable, they may not be. Next slide, please. Again, how unaffordable is your town's housing? There are different ways to measure that. What are the factors that need to be present? Do you have a strong market? Can a developer come in and develop some mixed income housing and not need any subsidy if the market's good? A really good example of that, and there are others, but a really good example is in Old Saybrook, where a developer put 186 multifamily units next to their Shoreline East train station. He made 20% of them income restricted, 37 of the units, and he didn't need a dime of subsidy from anyone, from the state or the feds or the town, because there was such a demand for multifamily units from downsizing baby boomers and young professionals there, that he made enough on the market rate units that he was able to make a little less on the income restricted units and still make a hefty profit. What can you offer a developer? There are all sorts of strategies for dealing with developers, and I'm happy to tell you about those. Next slide, please. And again, how does the housing's location add or subtract from its value? Where's the affordable housing in town? Are there better or worse places in town? And that's for you guys to decide. That's for the town to have a conversation about. Where do you want it? Where don't you want it? How is it really going to affect, all the things that you worry about, school costs and property values? And where are the good examples of it? And here's one pet peeve of mine. Some people say, well, our town is built out. I tell everyone there is no such thing as built out. They like to say, well, you never see a crane in Manhattan. Property gets redeveloped. Most cities have redevelopment authorities. That's because needs change, and some stuff that's there gets knocked down and new stuff gets built. Most towns don't have any experience in that. But there are properties that can be used for multifamily housing that maybe are being used for something else now. Redevelopment authorities will go up to property owners all the time and say, is your property for sale? And they say no. And they say, well, what if we rezone this for multifamily housing? Is it for sale now? Because if we rezone it for multifamily housing, you'll be able to get 2 or 3 times what you can get for the current zoning. And now the guy is thinking, well, maybe I was going to retire anyway next year, or maybe I can move my business and people will still be able to find me. Point is, you may ask 10 people that question and 7 of them may say no, but 3 of them may say yes. And now you suddenly have a site where if the property owner and the developer can agree on the price, you can find a good location where multifamily units can go that is not going to mess up a neighborhood, is not going to mess up traffic patterns, where most people in town are going to agree, okay, that's a decent place for it. So, that's the point. Those are ways to move ahead. And I happen to know that there are a few towns doing this. One town, I don't want to disclose, is now talking to the owner of a strip mall. And we all know in our towns that there were strip malls built in the 50s and 60s of 8 stores on a commercial strip, and time has passed them by, either because there's a mall there or there are other places to shop. And you can go up to the strip mall owner and say, I see you have some empty storefronts. Well, when the leases are up on the rest of them, how would it be if we rezone this for multifamily housing? And it might be a good place for it because it's not going to mess up a neighborhood. It may be on a bus line. It may be close to other shopping. That's an example. Like I said, I know one town that's doing that. So again, just another thing to think about. Next slide, please. Again, these are just principles to consider. Do you want people who work in your town hall to live in town? Do you want others to be able to come into town? Again, this is very personal, and it's personal to each town, and you have to think about this stuff as much as you want to think about it. Next slide, please. That is it. That's how to reach me. Everybody on the Housing Committee knows how to reach me. And now I've taken enough of your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Just to remind everybody, you can use the raise hand feature, which I guess is found different in whatever thing you're using. I know I'm using an iPad, and it's in the little smiley face with the plus on it. So you can raise your hand to talk. You can also, if you want to ask a question via chat, you can do so by chat. So please ask a question or make a comment, I should say. So please feel free to ask David or to make a comment on the presentation and on what your thoughts are. Thank you.
And somebody's going to field these questions.
Hi, David. It's Chris Sullivan. And Amy Morella is the first person up with her hand raised. So I'm going to unmute Amy. I'm assuming you're giving 3 minutes for each person to speak, Dominic? You're muted.
Because we'd like to get as many people. We have, I think, 30 some attendees. So we like to try to keep your comments to about 3 minutes so that we can go through as many people the first time as possible. And then once we get through that, if you want to speak again, you can. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to unmute Amy, okay? Go ahead, Amy, you're unmuted.
Yes, hi. I wanted to just supplement for those listening some written comments which I submitted and which I hope the committee will review in full. The first thing is both a question and a comment. I had thought that the town would do a build-out analysis of the dramatic changes that the TPZ put in place earlier this year, which could dramatically change the housing mix and housing opportunities available in our town from what exists today. So I don't understand, perhaps somebody can explain to me why one isn't in the works, and I would urge that you actually go forward with that. The next sort of topic is about senior housing. I expect that you have received some interest in the survey done so far in what would be characterized as senior housing in town. But I hope that the committee will look beyond what's been discussed so far in town. So far, the focus has been on some cluster of new age-restricted homes on undeveloped land. But the reality is, at least from AARP's recent study, which I cite, is that the majority of people want to stay in their existing homes and age in place. Mr. Fink spoke about aging in place, but the ideal aging in place is to stay in your own home, according to this survey. And now that the town allows accessory apartments, that's a real possibility for people. And I hope you will look at that alternative and consider it closely, both in the build-out analysis and in terms of what you might recommend for the town. Accessory apartments would allow someone to potentially to have a person to help them, to give a young person subsidized housing who could be there as needed. And those could be legally affordable rental or ownership housing, depending on how they're designed. And the last topic, well, and let me just add that I know a number of people in towns who actually are very interested in this. So I do hope you will look at it. The last thing that I wanted to comment on is that there are actually, as mentioned by Mr. Fink, there are a number of people who do live on the margins in our town as homeowners. The town has a local town tax relief program, and there are 102 households currently enrolled in that. I would suggest that you take a look at what opportunities there are to offer those people a tax incentive or other economic relief, and in turn for converting their homes to be legally affordable. There's data on what are naturally affordable housings in town. You could look at those more closely across the full range of our town, not just in the flats. And you could see where you might find a match between people who have naturally affordable homes and are themselves income restricted, and develop a program as it existed in other communities to provide a win-win for the people who own the homes currently and those who might want to own them in the future if they were legally affordable. And thank you very much.
Appreciate the comments, and yes, we do have your written comments. Chris, is there anybody else with their hand up? Or?
I'm sorry, I was unmuted. Next up is Sue Torgerson.
I don't know. I'm not speaking. Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Oh, yes. I was wondering about possibly tiny home communities. Any thoughts or ideas about possibly creating those in town?
Are you asking me?
Anybody? I'll ask anybody.
As we stated at the beginning, we're not going to specifically comment on things, but what we'll look at, I take it you're making a suggestion, and we'll be glad to take a look at them. I happen to be familiar with them, so we'll put them on the list of things we're going to discuss. Like I said, this is the first of many, hopefully, public sessions. But
well, thank you.
Okay, next up is Kathy Wick. And I do note that Kathy also submitted written comment, which was provided to all the committee members.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. I wanted to follow up on part of what Amy had to say, and specifically delve in a little more on what Mr. Fink called the small A affordable housing. When the Town Plan and Zoning Commission was considering the Orchard Road application earlier this year, it hired consultant Glenn Chalder from Planometrics. He gave an excellent presentation on March 18th of 2021. One point he made that jumped out at me was that Woodbridge has quite a lot of what he called naturally affordable housing, meaning homes with appraised values within the modest price range that is required to meet the official definition of affordable. Yet Woodbridge does not get official credit for these homes under the affordable housing statute because they are not deed restricted and therefore not legally classified as affordable. I wondered whether there was a way for the town to get credit for these already existing affordable homes by creating an incentive program for their owners. Quick internet research revealed that many towns and cities across the country have inclusionary housing programs that utilize the concept of shared equity. There are many ways these programs are structured. Currently, most inclusionary housing programs use resale restrictions to ensure that whenever a home is resold during the affordability period, it is sold at an affordable price. While programs use different resale formulas, most programs seek to balance two goals: allowing the homeowner to benefit from price appreciation in order to accumulate wealth, and keeping resale prices affordable for subsequent low and moderate income homebuyers. Just as our town incentivizes homeowners to preserve open space and farmland by offering a reduction in property taxes for those who enroll in the PA 490 program, the town could offer a tax break for owners of these naturally affordable properties if they enroll in an inclusionary housing program. The inclusionaryhousing.org website describes several different shared equity housing programs currently operating around the country, including one in Davidson, North Carolina, a town that's not much larger than Woodbridge. And I would encourage the committee to look closely at Davidson's program, and I've included a link to that website in my written submission. Given these examples, I suggest that the committee ask the tax assessor in town to produce a list of these naturally affordable homes in Woodbridge that would be candidates for an inclusionary housing program. Armed with this list and the examples of other towns, the committee could recommend that Woodbridge create an inclusionary housing program. Doing so would both move the town forward in its affordable housing goals and benefit current homeowners. Thank you.
Thank you.
There are currently no other speakers or attendees who have their hands up. And Amy, could you put your hand down? And Sue, if you could, you've got a question mark there, if you can close that out. Thank you. So just as a reminder, if you're on your computer, we've got Chuck Pine here. So Chuck, you've been unmuted.
Thanks very much. Just a quick question. Can you send us the link to that, is it Trulia study in Fairfield? You cited on one of the slides. I didn't see a link for it though.
Yeah, I can get that for you.
Yeah, can you put it in the comments, or how do you get it to me?
Well, I don't have it right here, but I'll send it along to Chris and Dominic, and they can get it.
Thank you.
If it's sent to Chris, it can be posted on the town website.
Okay, I'll get it for you.
Thank you very much. That was it.
Okay. Oops. Not seeing. Oh, Amy. Oh, never mind. Noah Safian, you are unmuted.
Hey, thought the talk was great, very helpful and easy to understand. I had a question about, I think you did a great job just speaking to the generalities of what housing and housing development looks like. And then thinking about how it applies to our town, you gave a number of guiding principles around what it does good, housing development look like, building in close to infrastructure and public transportation, close to shopping. I thought those were really helpful. I was wondering if you had any other tips on like what it means to do this kind of housing well. Like, I think like a lot of what you talked about was location, making sure you're appealing to the right demographics with the kind of housing you're building, as well as obviously the communication aspect around it. Anything else, like stuff like if you do run into a situation where a school has to expand, if you're going to run any more, like how to think about and communicate that, how to like look at capital projects that might come about as a result of increased town population, kind of how to break down that analysis.
Again, the issue is how many units you're going to create, how quickly you're going to do it, and as we said, what type of units, because that's going to determine school population and population generally and demand on services. Honestly, if I had to give one tip beyond what I said, I would say this. A lot of towns look at developers as carpetbaggers who just want to come in and make a quick profit and get out. And my experience, and again, I'm not denying that there are, in the course of history, have been developers like that. But my experience with developers, and not all nonprofit developers, what we like to call mission-driven for-profit developers who are skilled at what they do and make a profit, but they're just not that hungry to make the most profit possible, so they're willing to do income-restricted units. There are developers like that who you can invite to town. I've seen towns make the mistake of deciding, okay, we have identified sites A, B, and C for multifamily housing, and they make those judgments for certain, criteria for certain reasons, and some of it's political, and some of it is, guided by relationships. And then they invite a developer to town who says, well, A might be good, B, I don't think so, C, definitely not. Have you thought of sites D and E? The point being that, I don't want to get cheesy about this and say developers are your friends. The developers are in it to make money, but developers also know their business. And developers can walk your town with you, and you're not committing to them, you're not marrying them. But I think I know towns that have invited developers to town and walked through the town with them and said, what do you think? And what could go there? And they're pretty good with the numbers. And they can tell you what might work there and how many units and what it would cost and what help they might need from the town. So if I had a tip for you, I would say, I carry no water for these developers, but I could give you the names of some of them, and I know Kathy and Dominic and others know them. I would rely on them a little bit. Again, you don't have to swallow hook, line, and sinker, because they are in it to make a profit, but they also know their game, and they can tell you a little bit about what's possible and where, and that is valuable.
Thank you.
Noah, do you have any other questions?
No, thank you.
There are currently no other hands raised. Oh, Robert Hill, I say that and somebody else raises their hand. Robert Hill, you are now unmuted.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Yes. So, David, I think that you presented a number of years ago here in Woodbridge. So you've got familiarity not only from this current presentation, but previously. And I'm going to guess that you're very familiar with the ongoing debate that the town has faced with the former country club of Woodbridge property. And, when we originally purchased the property in 2009, it was so that we could control whatever happened on that property, and basically at that time preempt a major development of housing that was going to happen on that property. So we've debated for many years, and it's really been an opportunist approach to those who have come to us with their idea what they would like to see. We'd like to do this on your property. We'd like to do this on your property. And would you recommend or a process where an outside consultant would look at the property and come back with a number of alternatives for the property that the town could look at and say, here are 4 different things you could do with the property. or 5 or 6 or whatever it is, have the town consider it, and then the ones that we agree on, send it out for proposals to developers to see if they're interested in that idea. Because it seems that to the point we've worked up to this time, every time an idea comes to the table, because there's not really consensus on the idea, it gets shot down pretty feverishly. So your thoughts on that, David?
Well, again, I don't want to say I'm agnostic on the general question. I mean, on the particular question, I'm going to stay away from the country club property itself and just say, as a general matter, and I've seen this in other towns, if you have a large enough site, you don't have to do just one type of housing on that site. For instance, and Kathy Hunter may know a bit about this. I know a fellow named Bill Ferrigno who built a lot of single-family homes in Avon and Simsbury over the years and made a lot of money. But Bill is a wonderful guy, and he's built several mixed income projects. And he got a fairly large site in the north part of Simsbury, and some of what he's building are townhouses, and some are congregate units, and some are freestanding condos, and it's beautiful. And 20% of the units are income restricted of all types. 20% of each types of those units are overall 20%. The point being that sometimes when people look at a site, they think, well, we're just going to put all 4-bedroom colonials on the site, or we're all going to put all these large 4 or 5-story congregate apartment buildings on the site, or it doesn't have to be all of that. And developers are creative. And so, yeah, I mean, I think alternatives are always good. And, the last thing I'd say is pictures are really good too. I think that if you got some developers interested and you asked for proposals and they showed you what they could build there and people got to look at it, that can make a difference sometimes, because some people can visualize and some people can't. And, and then if you get a little more detailed, then you can talk about the prices of those units and the demand for those units and what it will bring the town in terms of property values. I mean, the bottom line is that towns that are adding, and my town has been adding a lot of multifamily housing over the last few years, it's really helped the grand list because, as I said earlier, that's what the market wants right now. Market wants multifamily housing, and developers are able to make money on multifamily developments. And, has it kept my property taxes? I can't say they've kept it low in West Hartford, but they've kept them lower, and they've kept service levels high. And, that's, so yeah, I mean, I think whether a consultant does that or you just, like I said earlier, ask, a bunch of, qualified, talented, creative developers to take a look at the site and think about it a little bit and give you a sense of what they can do. I mean, again, the issue is that a lot of them will not want to commit to anything before they do a lot of pre-development work, and that's engineering work and topographical studies and looking at stuff that they typically do, and they typically have to spend their own money on before they get a chance to actually develop the site and get the money back. So it will be limited what they can tell you, but I think it's worth it. I think it's good to get a bunch of different ideas. It's always good. You may go back to the original ideas that you have, but why not get a few new ones?
Okay, currently there are no other hands raised, but Noah and Robert, if you're done asking questions, if you can put your hand down, that would be appreciated. Dominic, I'm not seeing any other hands raised at this time.
Okay, one thing I wanted to add, the slide presentation by David, is that on our website?
I don't know off the top of my head, but we can certainly post it.
Yeah, I would like to have that posted so people I think it was a very informative presentation, and I think it would be beneficial to have it on our website. First of all, I want to thank all the members of the public for attending. The fact that running a remote public hearing, we had this much attendance is just a follow-up to the fact that I believe we were number 1 or 2, as we said, percentage-wise in the responses to the SCROG survey, which shows that we are an involved community, which is very important to this committee because you are part of the drafting of this plan, and we need your input. With that, if there's any commission members or Beth or anybody that wants to comment, go ahead, and then if not, we can just feel free. Anybody wishes to make a comment or anything?
Hi, this is Beth Heller. I just want to thank everyone. I'm sorry it was short notice related to COVID that we had to move the location, but we kept everybody safe, and considering that there are, it looks like 37 participants, that's pretty good. And I think there were more. And I want to thank David and all the committee members as well. David especially for a well-done presentation and taking the time with us again in Woodbridge. Looking forward to more. Thank you.
Thank you all very
We
much.
should mention that there were a number of people that did go to the JCC. So I think we should be posting something on our website, inviting people who may not have been able to attend to submit written comment for you guys so that we can forward that to you.
Absolutely. And also of those people that are attendees, if you do think of something afterwards, please, it's very important for you to send in written comments to the town, to Chris's email, and she'll disseminate it to us. Okay, it's very important that we hear from the public. It's also very important that everybody stays well so we can turn from red to gray, and our next public meeting can be in person rather than in rectangles. So with that, I want to thank David. David, as usual, your presentation was very informative and very helpful. And we're going to use it and the public comment as a springboard and a reminder to everybody that's in attendance that in January, we will be coming out some point in January. We will be coming out with our own survey, maybe early February, but probably in January. So keep your eyes and ears out open for that. And with that, I will conclude the meeting and wish everybody a happy holiday. Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, and please stay healthy throughout this trying time. Thank you very much.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.